go to our website after this program because we have a survey to fill out. And this is how we decide on our programming for next year and make some of those decisions. And that's how this one came about around this time last year. So we very much like input of everybody. I hope you're able to pick up our next flyer of our program, which is on February 6th. It is What's for Dinner, Healthy Meal Planning for Busy Families. We have a double mom here who's going to be putting on different meals and so forth. But we also have a dietitian coming from Nationwide Children's Hospital, and it should be a great opportunity for families and also to learn when you need to be a little concerned about maybe something happening dietary in your family. Also, I wanted to make sure that you were aware that we are very happy. Special thank yous to Dublin City Schools, the Dublin Rec Center, Mathnasium, for all their ongoing support. ACT is here, and they've been very supportive of us, and Centero as well too. Today, also, I wanted to give a little quick on February 29th. It's Be Well here in Dublin City Schools, and it's going to be, they partner with Hilliard as well as Dublin City Schools. And on February 29th, it'll be a day where you can come and hear the speaker, The Gift of Failure, and it will be over at one of the Hilliard High Schools. I think it's Davidson. But half the days will be back and forth, different programming that you can pick out. So that should be a great opportunity. The other thing that's happening in the community I thought was worth mentioning today is also our state representative, Beth Liston, is putting on your mental health first aid workshop. And that's happening on January 25th, this Saturday, and then also February 2nd. And I know some people in the room have done that, so you have questions about what that was like. It's an all-day thing, but it should be good. There's some flyers back there as well, too. Again, we are so happy to be here and present this program. One reason why P.E.R.C is here is to present topics that get you thinking and talking with your kids about important issues. And our kids are talking about the LGBTQ community all the time, and we as parents need to be a part of that conversation. We have special guests here that will be introduced by Dr. Michael, and we have guests from Nationwide Children's Hospital and parents here too who are going to share their stories. You're going to hear great technology terms, how to support your children, and other also offer programs that are available around the community that you can hear around too. So, without further ado, we are really happy, first of all, to have Dr. Michael Patrick here. He does a podcast for Nationwide Children's Hospital. This is his third time visiting us and coming here with a panel discussion. And so today, we have gotten questions from our community, and then along with that, Dr. Mike has gotten those questions, along with Amanda Lovell, who's here from Nationwide Children's Hospital. She's also a parent here in Dublin. We thank you for all your work. So then all those questions came, and then our guests then received those questions, and they'll hear them today too and be able to answer them to everybody. And again, we thank all of you for coming, and we hope that when you leave today, you'll tell your friends about it, and we'll have a full house again tonight too. Thank you.
Great. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes? Okay. All right. Yes. Really loud. So I have the honor of introducing our distinguished panel, and we'll start with Dr. Scott Leibowitz. He is, what's your reading in there? Exactly what you're talking about. He is the Medical Director of Behavioral Health for the Thrive Gender Development Program, and we'll talk more about what that is a little later in the program at Nationwide Children's Hospital. And he's an Associate Professor of Psychiatry at the Ohio State University College of Medicine. He is the co-chairman of the Sexual Orientation Gender Identity Issues Committee for the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and is on the faculty for the World Professional Association of Transgender Health's Global Education Initiative. All that to say that he has a passion for working with gender diverse youths of all ages and is a leading national and international, in fact, I think just back from Vietnam, like in the last 24 hours. So he is an expert, internationally known expert on the mental health and well-being of LGBTQ plus youth. Then next to him we have Michael Evelyn. He counsels youth and families at Centiro, which is a Central Ohio mental health agency. He received a Master's of Social Work degree from The Ohio State University and has previously worked as a prevention specialist at Kaleidoscope Youth Center and at Ohio State's Student Counseling Center, where he facilitated a therapy group for transgender students called True Selves. Michael is currently the LGBTQ plus program coordinator at Centiro. He leads the Celebrate Youth support groups for teens and the Celebrate Us group, which supports families and parents of LGBTQ plus youth. And then we have Tyler Baker down at the end. Tyler is a guidance counselor at Dublin Jerome High School. He's a graduate of Miami University, where he earned a Bachelor's of Science in Education, as well as a Master's degree in Educational Leadership. Tyler holds a second Master of Education degree in School Counseling from the University of West Alabama. As an educator, Tyler has a passion to support and impact the development of all students and finds great joy in being a part of their growth and development. And then we have a couple of terrific parent contributors to our discussion today. What's that? Sharon. That was going to be that's what I thought. So this is Sharon Terry. She is mother to a gay, non-binary adult child and serves as president of P.E.R.C Columbus, and we'll talk more about what that is in a little bit. Jared describes herself as a straight, cisgender, old white lady who is an advocate, ally, and activist for the LGBTQ plus community. She volunteers for Equitas Health and serves on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee for the Public Relations Society of America. Jaren is also adjunct faculty at Franklin University, where she teaches creative thinking and crisis communication. As board president with P.E.R.C Columbus, Jaren advocates for social justice and human rights, and is a frequent writer and speaker on diversity, equality, and inclusion. She's a U.S. veteran and Ohio native and holds both bachelor's and master's degrees in communications from Virginia Commonwealth University. She and her husband reside here in Central Ohio. And then we have Laura Moyer with us. She is a speech-language pathologist and community volunteer who describes herself as first and foremost a mom. Her son came out as gay at age 12 and has been fully accepted since day one. Laura is passionate about educating others about the LGBTQ community and is a strong advocate for inclusion and representation. So let's give a quick round of applause. This is truly an expert panel with us today, so we're excited to get right into it. So Dr. Scott, let's start with you. LGBTQIA+, what do all of these letters mean?
Okay, so I think that we've all seen this acronym grow more and more and more. And I think sometimes back we think, you know, whatever happened to the days of just simple LGBTQ, or even just LGBT. And it can be daunting because we want to be inclusive. And I think that it's important that we understand that me telling you what these terms mean is actually me not doing my job, because that defeats the whole purpose of being inclusive. Everybody identifies in their own way. Every term means something different to each person. And the point here is that there are some kids that are going to want to put themselves into a box and label themselves because it feels good for them based on how, you know, their own psychological makeup. And there are other kids that actually want to be free of a label. They want to be free of being put into a box. And so while the acronym has grown and has become very inclusive, in some ways it's also misleading. LGBT implies that you're kind of LGB or T, and we all know that really everybody has a gender identity, everybody has a gender expression, everybody has a sexual orientation, and everyone has sort of an anatomical makeup of their body, and T people can also be LGBT. So that what I would say is, I'm not opposed to the LGBTQIA+ acronym, and I can go down historically what everybody thinks those sort of letters mean, if that would be helpful, but I think the preface is more important than describing the acronym itself.
Yeah. What about pansexual?
Again, pansexual is like kind of a newer term that's been used by the youth. Again, it's not really a scientific term used in scientific medical literature, so I think that's important. I think that we, as people who are not in this younger generation, tend to want to know what the terms mean very literally because we want to connect with our kids. So I think that as a psychiatrist, I'm here to ask the question, well, why did you ask the question? Why do you want to know what pansexual means? Some kids use pansexual to mean that they have attractions to individuals no matter what their gender expression or gender identity is, so anywhere across that gender spectrum, so to speak, since in the past gender was really thought of as a binary construct of male or female, like so distinguishing pansexual from bisexual. But others have used pansexual to mean just having attractions to, just a person, regardless, just like having a more romantic connection to someone. So people have termed it pan-romantic instead of pansexual. So I think that whether they're talking about having attractions to people of all genders or just having attraction to a person, regardless of gender, that's something that is important to distinguish. And the point being, ask your kid what they mean when they say, I identify as pansexual.
Jaren, you used both the word straight and cisgender to describe yourself. Which word, does it matter which word that we use, or heterosexual? Like how do you determine what terminology that you presented there?
Well, thank you, Laura. So, I'm Jaren, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I like to introduce myself that way because it gives people who use different pronouns from what their visual coding might be an opportunity to give their pronouns too. So the only reason I describe myself as a straight, cisgender, old white lady is, first of all, I want to jump on the old before someone else calls me that, but only in relation to my P.E.R.C work. Because, for example, I'm going to Columbus Metropolitan Lunch after this to celebrate suffrage. Yes, it's been 100 years, haven't we come a long way? But I don't go up to people in a community setting and say, hey, I'm straight, what are you? But I think it's important that as an ally, people know that I get it. And in particular, saying that I'm cisgender, which simply means that the way I see my gender in my brain is what the doctor thought he saw when I was born. And I'm sure it was a he in 1950. Oh, I'm not telling that. No, 1952. But basically, cisgender just means I'm not non-binary and I'm not transgender. So I like to put all that out there so that people have permission to put their own out there if they want to, or know that it kind of signals that I'm a safe person.
Michael, so when we're talking about pronouns, sometimes we do get it wrong. How do we handle that?
Yeah, so I would say that a quick rule of thumb is to not belabor the point, to always acknowledge and say, like, sorry, he, but then to kind of keep it moving, because that can, I've seen a lot of people kind of draw that out and make it a big moment. And then otherwise, I think once you get it wrong, to also maybe spend some time on your own when you're talking about that person practicing, or there's a few other ways you could practice, but to kind of do like the work on your own so that you can kind of show the person you're referring to that you are really trying and that you are really sorry.
Yeah. Dr. Scott, there's a lot more awareness about LGBTQ out there. Is there more of this? Are there more students identifying, or are we just hearing more about it?
It's a tough question to answer because it's a hidden population. And so there's so many that don't necessarily come out, don't feel comfortable, and depending on the community that they live in, or depending on the school environment that they're in, depending on what's said. So between the fact that the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is a a national-based survey that is done every 2 years. Does not include questions on sexual orientation or gender identity in an overwhelming majority of the states. This is where most sort of national, like the census for minors, so to speak. So because that doesn't include those questions universally, it's hard to estimate the prevalence. Human Rights Campaign has done the leading sort of demographic research on youth, while the Williams Institute in LA has done the leading research for transgender folks in adults. The Human Rights Campaign has estimated about 10,000 youth in the United States identified as LGBTQ. In adults, the prevalence is about 1 in, for I would say, be identifying as a cisgender gay person or same-sex attraction, same gender attraction. Anywhere between 1 in 7 people identify as that way, up to 1 in 10. For transgender adults, it's about 0.6% of the adult population, which translates to roughly 1 in 200 people. I think that in the past, what you need to know is that the research relied on simply people who only went through gender-affirming surgeries and counted those people as sort of the only people who were transgender. And not many people went through those surgeries because they were A, not perfected, and B, not within reason financially for the majority of people that needed it. So past estimates of like 1 in 37,000 people, which I've seen like in the 60s and 70s, are being applied now by certain sort of organizations who are not really up to date with the current estimates and the true prevalence.
What does the development of gender identity look like in kids? How does that happen about what ages? Do they start to know whether they're boys or girls?
Okay, so this is very difficult research. All my answers are that are going to be that like this is very difficult research. And it's impossible research. And let me first explain why. Okay, so in order to understand gender identity development in a really sort of good scientific methodology way, you would need to study large amounts of people. Okay, so you would have to just take many thousands and thousands of pregnancies. You'd have to measure hormone levels during the pregnancy, which is expensive. You would have to then you'd have to do genetic testing. You'd have to then follow kids over time. When kids are born, no matter what their sex anatomy is, you'd have to kind of randomize them to different groups and have rear some as male, whatever that means, rear some as female, whatever that means, rear some as without a gender, whatever that means, okay? Track them over time. You'd have to put them into different environments, so you'd have to put them into certain environments that have like gender binary, sort of like marinating them in like reinforcing gender stereotypical roles, and other environments where there's no gender roles at all. So I don't know if such environments. And you just have to sort of also then track these hormone levels and do brain scans on everybody over a good period of time into through puberty to see how kids fluctuate and develop. Those are the types of studies that are required to truly understand gender identity development and the differences that exist in gender identity development for different people. And so I don't know how many parents are like jumping to enroll their kids into that type of study. And so when you hear calls for, well, there's not a lot of evidence for these treatments, we should ban these treatments because the evidence base doesn't exist, there's no randomized control trials. Essentially what people need to know is that that's just never going to happen. To quote Mean Girls, it's not going to happen. So I think that it's unethical, and gender identity development is very complex. Historically, though, to answer your question, historically, the studies that did look at, the theories, I should say, that looked at gender identity development started off very much a product of what the psychiatric climate was at the time. So Freud, for example, was the beginning theorist about gender identity development. Freud felt that like boys who didn't overcome certain elements of castration anxiety. They would be stuck in this phase, and they would not have proper gender development, and the opposite true for girls. Those models evolved beyond some psychoanalytic beliefs in the 30s to a more combination of beliefs of different traits that were associated with the different sexes, like nurturance in females and power-seeking behaviors in males. Those sort of clusters of different gender behaviors were associated with the different sexes, and those were more theories in the 80s. But the problem being, we haven't really had now the chance to study kids over time, and we don't have instruments that measure behaviors of gender that are not binary. And that's really important, is that we all know that while, yes, the majority of people's bodies fall into one of two categories, gender identity and gender expression is itself a dimensional construct, not a dichotomous one. And so if we are able to capture that and do research in that way, then we can really truly get at the answer to the question that you were asking.
Well, it's a lot younger than you think. Kind of what they feel.
Was that too long?
No. So, Michael, when do you...
Can I jump in real quick and piggyback on what Dr. Nicolette said? So, I'm in a moms group of like 7,000 moms nationwide, and almost to a mom, they have said, we knew when our kid was a toddler that they were either going to be LGBT or that they were T and non-binary. So, and that's certainly my experience. We knew from the time our child was 3 years old that if he wasn't gay, he was missing a good chance. But we didn't know about the gender non-binary until later, because we just sort of thought some of his behaviors went along with being gay. But, you know, cisgender gay men usually don't really want a sparkly beret, whereas a non-binary kid might. Does that make sense?
Michael, in counseling, do you see certain ages where kids start to think about maybe identifying as gay or any of these other things? Are there patterns that you see in your practice?
Honestly, not really. It feels like it is like really scattered across the lifespan. That there are some clients that I've had that their parents are saying, like, literally since this person could talk, they were telling me they're a girl, or they've been exhibiting, like as soon as they would walk, or as soon as they could have choices of toys, they were exhibiting certain preferences. And there are other people that I think, even on like gender levels or sexuality, they like experience like their first signs of awareness in puberty or in their late 20s. People even later that maybe have a harder time getting in touch with it, or there's a complicating variable of some kind. It's in their late life. So I think puberty does lend itself towards like some self-discovery, of course. I'm sure like most of us can relate, but otherwise I think it is really all over the place.
Yes. And you also have to pay attention to the environment too, because maybe you have a boy who likes to play with girl things, but there's also two sisters in the house, and so some of that preference may not be internal as much as just what's in the environment, correct?
Right. Well, and on the other side too, that there are all kinds of subtle ways in which we're reinforcing, and not by telling little boys that they're tough or that they're little men, and that they might then see other people that are supposed to be like them categorically and then want to emulate that. So yeah, I think on both sides it's pretty complicated.
You mentioned complicating variables. Would that be church maybe?
Yeah, it would be. Or like somebody, like either some people are just less self-aware, and some people from the moment that they have cognition, they are immediately like desperately aware of what's going on. Or yeah, some people I think feel the pressures of society to fit in. There are certain cultures, certainly in the religions too. But those are all I think variables that I have seen complicate people's journeys.
Yeah. Karen, do you think that there's ways that we can normalize the experience of experimenting with gender identity?
Well, I know that when I was of a marriageable age, there were studies at that time about giving trucks to girls and dolls to boys, and I think they called those studies failed because, you know, most of the boys wanted a truck, most of the girls wanted a doll. And so I think the bottom line is whatever, have all these toys available, and especially in the classroom, if there are any teachers here, and let kids play with whatever it is they want to play with.
Let them make believe too. Let them act, let them sing, let them dress up as, boys dress up in girls' dresses, let girls be firemen. Just allow kids to be who they are and tell you who they are. And when they tell you who they are, listen. It might be to that day, it might be that imagination. I was Miss Gulch for 2 days straight when my son was little, because in his head we were in Wizard of Oz, that period of time in his play. So just let them be who they are the day that they are that. And it may continue and it may not, but it gives them a chance to know they can explore who they are completely and use their imaginations, which is a gift.
Do you see phases where kids, you know, for a while they may want to play with some things, and then at other times that they're playing with other things?
Absolutely. I think all the parents would see phases, and when it comes to gender identity, there could be a phase. It may not be a phase. My experience with gender identity and kids evolving somewhere into the LGBTQ community, they pretty much know, and it's not a phase. However, if we as parents love our kids and support them, and it's a phase, they know we love and support them. And if it's not a phase, they know we love and support them because we've loved and supported them. And just one little extra piece on that phase thing is, what I experience, have seen and known of this group of 7,000 moms and others, that sometimes kids will say to their parents, I'm bisexual, and then a year or so later, I'm really not, I'm really full-on gay. And then even still sometimes later realizes I'm not in the body that I was meant to be in, I'm transgender. So phasing can happen that way potentially, and sometimes it's a phase. But I think kids know who they are and what they feel and what they're telling us they mean. And we should listen and believe them and say, okay, what does that mean to you? And just listen instead of tell them.
Because the harm if we don't believe them can be devastating.
So in your answer, you're talking about having conversations about this with your kids. Michael, how do you start those kind of conversations?
I would say early and often that I think kids are often seeing difference all over the place. And I have noticed there is like this natural inclination, at least in our Western society, to be like, oh no, we're all the same, and kind of push past that difference instead of really open up a conversation and talk about it. So I think when like kids notice silence, they get curious, and so they kind of wander off on their own. So I would say like start the conversation before it comes up, and also just have them being exposed to all of the world's diversity, so that they know that like people are just different, and then you can build off of that, being like, oh, this is another way that people are different, and that's part of what makes, I would say, the human race like so great, is that we are so different from each other, and like building off of that, I think that's like a pretty age appropriate level for anybody, and then as they get older, the conversations get more specific.
Tyler, if I think that my child may be LGBTQ, but they haven't come out, we haven't really had this conversation, how do you approach your child without necessarily being insensitive? It seems like you have to kind of walk a little bit of a fine line.
Sure, I think that answer really goes back a long, long distance. You said, Mike said early and often, our parents said, you know, being open to letting your kids play and be who they are. And I think that relationship that goes back a long time of being open and understanding and having a place where your kids can come to you and share with who they are and have that kind of relationship where they feel comfortable sharing things that they might not know how you're going to react to. I think that being that person that's always their rock, always their steady, not overreacting in situations, which can be led up to with many, many events getting to this point, then when you have that conversation, it's much easier because they know you're a steady person. They can always be there for them to hear whatever kind of information they might want to share. And when you talk about relationships, when they get to the age where they might start having significant others, maybe using that term, significant others, as opposed to boyfriend, girlfriend, predetermining this would be the sex that you would be obviously interested in. So putting that kind of scenario together, leading up to it, and then having the opportunity, if you're fortunate enough to have family friends or family members who identify any way other than what we would think of stereotypically traditional, maybe using examples in conversation. But there's a lot of lead up, I think, that gets to that specific point.
Jaron, if you suspect that your child is gay, but they haven't come out, they haven't mentioned it at all, how do you support them in that, even when it's not out in the open in the house?
Well, interesting question. This came up at the P.E.R.C meeting on Sunday night. Mother was pretty sure that her daughter was lesbian, but she didn't want to confront her because if it wasn't true, then that would be so embarrassing. It's like, well, first of all, that's not embarrassing to be LGBTQ, but what I suggested to her and to other parents is be sure that you are making positive comments when Modern Family comes on. Or if there's an article in a magazine or something that is positive about the community, just leave it casually laying around and, comment, wow, that was a really good article. And what do you want for dinner tonight? Don't dwell on it, don't make it an issue, but let that child know through subtle cues, and maybe not so subtle, but keep them fairly subtle, that you're a safe person. Again, it's all about not damaging your child. Don't be your child's first bully by saying, things to a gay boy like, oh, no, wave your hands around, or whatever. If he's making gestures that you're worried someone will think he's gay, just let him be who he is.
And Laura, what if they keep denying it?
Well, I put this question out to a big community, and everybody said, don't ask. However, if you've asked, reset. Don't beat yourself up about asking, because there are a lot of folks who say, don't have a child, don't bring them to that place when they're not ready to get there. But we want to know our kids. We're told to ask questions, find out about their lives. And then we want to be prepared, and sometimes we just want to know so we can pick our path with raising our kids. I'd say reset and continue with the advice you just heard. Just provide an open conversation, dialogue, provide an open, welcoming environment. Don't overdo it because our kids know when we're forcing it, say, oh boy, I heard another thing that was about the LGBT community today. You can go home today and say, what's the greatest talk? I have this great article. Or I had this, do you have any friends? And ask about other things, or talk about your own friends. But allow your child the space to come to it when they do. And don't beat yourself up for maybe trying too hard or pushing. Just start now and say, all right, I'm going to provide that open environment, continue the dialogue, demonstrate in our home that these 4 walls are safe, engaging, open, the love is there no matter what, unconditionally. Nothing a child can say or do to me is going to change how much I love that child, and go from there. So denying, you can stop denying, you can stop asking, which is suggested, and then allow them to come to you. Sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it takes 4 years. Regardless, you're loving and supporting your child, you're opening the conversation, and you're allowing the rest of the family to know this is a really fine thing, just like anything else, just like being redheaded.
So that's a great plan. And you try to, bring it up naturally and not too often, but, like any parent, you seize the opportunity and you ask again and again, and then they become upset. How do you navigate the relationship when they're upset that you do keep asking, even though you told yourself you weren't going to?
And that's really hard. I gave a glass of wine and a couple of friends to bed around. 2 glasses of wine. It's individual. Then you say to your child, I've upset you. I'm really sorry. I just want you to know you can come to me with anything, and you tell me what you need, would be, I think, one suggestion. If you are really struggling as a parent, and that may be why you're going after your kid, go to P.E.R.C. P.E.R.C. Columbus is terrific. There are other places you can go and get resources. Reach out to Centero or another therapist if you have one to sort of get your head wrapped around it, whether it is your child or not. You still want to be an ally to any of their friends, anybody else in your family. So get yourself comfortable and feeling very natural and not needing to ask that question would be helpful. And possibly set up a time for your child to work with a counselor. Maybe your child isn't comfortable talking with you, but needs support and advice on how to come to you or how to come to terms inside themselves. So those would be some suggestions.
And Tyler, tell us about health class. What are kids in Dublin schools learning about LGBTQ?
So I'm not an expert on the curriculum, but I've been at both the middle school and high school level where we have health classes and have pretty fair confidence that our health teachers are making great effort to make sure that everything they do is gender neutral. So when we get into the anatomy unit, everything is intended to be gender neutral. There are some specific topics that come up, such as bullying, where we want to make sure certain groups that might potentially be marginalized are represented, and I know that that's talked about during those units. And then at the high school level, I don't know that this happens at all high schools or at the middle school level. I know at Jerome we have someone from Centero who comes in for one of the units and speaks specifically about all the different acronyms and making sure that our students have a full understanding of that. I think most kids do. I think generationally, I feel like kids are more accepting. If we scale back generations, I think about my grandparents and as progressive as they weren't progressive on everything. And then I look at today's child and there's certain things that 15 years ago we heard and we would never hear now. That kids are just far more understanding and accepting. And I think that comes from education. But I think that also is just the generational shift. So it's a lot of gender neutral terms and it's a lot of very, very supportive language. So it doesn't predetermine where kids should be.
Dr. Scott, maybe there's a child at school who is struggling with inclusion or identity. How can their friends guide conversations and help support someone who may be struggling with that?
I think it's important for the students themselves who are there to help, reach out to these kids and let them know that there's a safe space for them. Hopefully there are certain clubs, GSAs in the school, and sort of make outreach to them and say, look, you're not alone. There's other people here, whether they be allies or going through the same experience as you. And also have those students give the excluded student validate their experience of maybe they're not ready, and also say, look, it's not necessary that you seek out these services. But what I do want to point out is I think it's the parents' jobs to help their kids who are the helpers. We all have kids in the room probably who are those really incredible, warm, kind-intentioned kids that just don't want to see the marginalized youth suffer, take on their issues and take on their mental health struggles and think they can play the role of mental health professional. And so safety is absolutely first. So parents need to have conversations with their kids, even though their kids may be intentionally wanting to help, letting them know that there's only so much that they can do, and that if a safety concern does come up, they cannot keep that inside. They do have to escalate that to a mental health professional, whether it be a guidance counselor, their counselor, or even just sort of a safe parent who can intervene, because the harm, the guilt that the helper student would hold if, in an unfortunate circumstance, that excluded student did something, and that helpful student didn't actually say anything, I think would be far worse outcome.
Michael, how do parents start those kind of conversations with their kids in order that they know how to be open and help their friends who may be struggling, and when safety lines have been crossed? How do you start those kind of conversations at home?
Well, when it comes to just general LGBT stuff, I think it is a lot of what we were talking about, like having the media things open, having those open kind of conversations that again lead to people just being open-minded about all of the diversity that exists. And if you do notice that they say things that are like a little like rigid, like, oh, like boys aren't supposed to do that, or if they say things like that, those are probably the building blocks where they might also want to police somebody's gender at school. So I would like jump on that and say like, oh, well, how do you know that? Like, you know, people are way too different for you to be able to say that about all boys. Like, whoa. And then otherwise, I think P.E.R.C. actually had a training on like how people can identify signs of suicide and like what the protocol would be to how to get that information to the right person. So I think it would also be making sure that your child knows that you are safe if they need to, anytime that there's a concern that comes up, that they can share with you, and you can help them. That is a real big problem for a little person to handle on their own. So I would say, yeah, like that, be involved in their like social life to some extent, be asking questions and just asking how their friends are, and really be paying attention, because I would want you to be on their team.
Tyler?
Can I say something? I want to piggyback on what the term Tyler used, gender neutral. So, and this is not a plug for my child, but they started a clothing company that's gender equal. And what Kevin says is gender is not neutral. It's part of who we are. And so gender equal, that all genders anywhere on the spectrum to be recognized. Just have to get that out.
So Tyler, at school, kids are talking about things. There may be more evidence that there is struggle with identity that's not really been discussed in the home. So how do you handle that from the school perspective when you know that a child's struggling, but this is an issue that maybe the parents don't know about?
Sure, as school counselors, it's our job to listen, try to help kids determine their own direction, let them kind of work through what they're considering and questioning with our own questions that are not intended to be directive. On top of that, anything that a child would share with a school counselor is generally not going to be disclosed to anybody else, with the exception of safety. If there was safety that might be included for that child or somebody else, we always generally give a heads up as we start to get into any kind of conversation of any weight that we might have to share that with somebody if we're concerned for somebody's safety. That almost always is parents or administrator. But unless there's any kind of safety concern, we're intended to be a safe place where children can share. So it might be possible that we've heard this conversation, maybe even for some time before a parent has heard that. So we're there to be a safe place to listen and not provide any type of judgment or direction.
Dr. Scott, what should you do if your child, that you have these conversations, maybe in school and then at home, they decide that they do want to come out? Do you have any tips for parents on handling that process?
Yes, I think that the best thing for a parent to do is to not let their own anxiety about the best way of coming out for them impact the way their kid needs to come out. I think that it's important for the parent to ask an open-ended question to their youth and say, first say, I'm proud of you, this is a courageous step. So again, that's a demonstration of universal acceptance and love. I'm sure a future question talks about the protective nature of universal acceptance. And then ask the open-ended question of, how do you want me to help you with this? And whatever they say, you go with. And I think keeping that open-ended approach by saying to the youth, look, if tomorrow you change your mind and you feel like you want to just, come out to more people, I'm here for you, even if you say something different today, so that gives the kid the space to feel like they're not boxed into whatever decision they made in that moment. And I think that's really the best way to do it, follow their lead.
Jaren, are there some small ways that you can be supportive and help your child feel more comfortable without necessarily being obvious during that coming out process?
Well, as I said before, making sure that you are making positive comments about the LGBTQ community and, commenting on the news or television programs or whenever it comes up without pressing the point. Again, we had a mom in P.E.R.C who, the first thing she said to her child was, well, let's not tell grandma. And the message that gives to the child is, oh my God, because I'm not good enough for grandma, or there's something that now my mom's embarrassed about who I am. And so you don't want to give those kinds of negative messages. But again, like Scott said, the open-endedness of how can I help you? And what we see with most parents is that kids will ask them to be the one who bears the news to the extended family. And we talk a lot, especially at the holidays, about how to handle those holiday dinners or family reunions, that situation where you usually have one bombast. Isn't that a nice word? It rhymes a bit. Who is always saying negative things. And that is to make sure you have an exit plan with your family. So maybe it's a safe word, like, oh, did I leave that iron plugged in? And everybody in the family knows it's time to leave. Or something that if the child themselves maybe they come in from another room where they were with that Uncle Joe, and they feel like it's not safe here anymore. They can say the safe word too, and the whole family right then, oh my gosh, yes, we gotta go. See you later.
I don't want to belabor, I just wanted to add two more things that happen in our family. Two quick things. My son said to us, we come from a generation where you come out to the family. And when he put things on social media, and we had talked to a few neighbors like, hey, you're going to see some things on social media, when he got asked to prom by his boyfriend. We thought, oh, do we tell the family? And we asked him, and he said, I don't know, do whatever you want. He said, straight kids don't announce to the world that they're going to date, straight boys don't announce to the world they're going to date girls. Why should I announce I'm going to date a boy? We're like, oh, thank you, honey, you're right. So really let them lead you. The other thing that we did, before he was coming out, it was I think days within him telling us, he came stricken, looking, worried about a very evangelical member of our family. And I said, that person will no longer be welcome in our home if they say, if he or she says or does anything that hurts you. He was shocked. And I said, we will always love your aunt. We will always maintain contact. I will never tell Daddy he can't talk to his sister, but I will not let anyone in this home that is not 100% affirming and making you feel comfortable, period. So even just a comment like that back to your child lets them know. It gave him relief. He still wasn't ready to come out, but it helped him on his steps forward.
I'm so sorry to jump in on this. But I do also want to sort of add the element of parental anxiety and parental grief and the parents' experience and where things are coming from. It's okay for parents to be upset. It's okay. Like a lot of us, we're sitting here talking a lot about what to do for the kid, how to help the kid, and like with the airplane. You have to put the mask on yourself first before you put the mask on your kid. And I think that sometimes it's easier for a parent to put the mask on themselves, and sometimes it's not easy. And I think that sometimes parents actually do make that sort of maybe not appropriate statement like, let's not tell grandma. But I think it's important that parents who are in a different place, where they are further along in this process, it's easy for us to sort of tell the parents who are younger in the process or a little bit more turned off by this, who have, those parents are sitting here thinking, these people don't know me, these people don't know what my experience is, no one knows my personal family, the generations of how important it was that I had a firstborn son for my sort of important, say, all my family died in the Holocaust, and I needed to have that son, and now that son's a daughter. So I think it's important that we give parents the space to have their own experience, and when we see that is maybe harming the child, not judge the parent, but bring them, try try to be empathic with them and help them get into the help that they need privately so that they can process their own issues and put that mask on themselves first.
And I'd like to put in a plug for P.E.R.C. That's where you can do that. And one of the things that we say is that closet door that the kids come out of is a revolving door. And very often when the kid comes out, the parent goes in. And that's okay, because for me personally, I went in the closet because my husband and I were very involved at the United Methodist Church where we had raised our son. If I have any regrets, it's having done that. But we went in the closet because we wanted to be in the position, I wanted to be in the position that when we did tell people about our son, that I wasn't going to be like crying and grieving, because yes, indeed, I did grieve. I grieved that beautiful bride who I envisioned the day my child was born. And that's a natural thing that parents do. They see that new baby and they start thinking about all the wonderful things that that kid is going to experience in their life. And of course, love and marriage is probably the most, well, love anyway, is probably the most important thing for all human beings. And so what I came to realize, that the script I had in my mind for my child did not have to be rewritten. It just had to be recast.
Laura, for parents who are going through this, and it may be sort of a very private time as they're going through that grieving process and coming to terms with it, what does that parent need in terms of support from other parents? Like, how do you start those conversations of support with someone who they haven't necessarily come out yet?
Well, you don't necessarily start the conversation because the parent may not be ready for it. They may be afraid to be outed even by somebody who's a close friend. I think being a listener, taking it out, what we've already talked about, inside the home, outside of the home. Talk to friends, even friends you may suspect, and say, went to the greatest P.E.R.C. talk, one of the best today. It was all about this. And this is something really cool I learned. So provide them, make yourself open to being available to sharing. And if somebody shares with you, help them get resources, be a listener. Don't solve their problems. Don't necessarily try to put yourself in their position, because you may not be ever in their position. But just be like you would anybody else who's grieving, who's experiencing something new, whose kid is going through something developmentally. All our kids go through something at some point. You help your friends out. There's probably a lot more that you could say, and therapists would offer more, but I think just being a listener, being there for your friends, being available, being more welcoming and affirming and
Tyler, along those same lines, in the school, how can students best support their friends who are transitioning and are coming out?
Yeah, I think I've used these words several times with many different students. Everybody can be supportive, caring, encouraging, and a listener. But as you had referenced earlier, there's boundaries. We often joke with kids and say, tell me about what kind of licensure or degree you have in any kind of training. And almost always they get it right off the bat and they smile and I say, right. There's a place where you need to know where you can stop, because you can put yourself in a really uncomfortable position where you're trying to serve as a therapist, as a counselor, and you need to be able to say, I don't know what to do, but I really care about you. We need to get you to somebody that knows more than I do. So those are easy things that every single child or adult, for that matter, can do. Supportive, caring, encouraging, be a listener.
Should this family reach out to the school during that coming out process?
It depends. So every kid's going to be a little bit different. Some kids, when they find out that all their teachers, their counselors, their principal know what's going on, they feel incredibly affirmed and supportive, and that's exactly what they need. And in other instances, kids might be more private. And for somebody outside of just their select group that they want to have know this information knows, they can put them in a position where they feel really vulnerable and maybe like somebody's tapped into what's theirs and they didn't intend for them to have that. So every kid's going to be different. Now, the one thing I would say is if a student's transitioning and they're using a different name, that might be helpful for the school to know, because at least in our computer system, the legal name shows up at the computer, but we have a chance to put in a nickname. So if I'm Tyler, but I want to go by Teresa now, any secretary that calls you down to the office to give you something would know when I walk in there in parentheses, you're not calling me Tyler, you're calling me Teresa. And that's a pretty quick thing for adults to pick up on.
And substitute teachers.
Oh yeah, excellent, yeah, substitute teachers as well, so, but for the most part, depends on the kid.
Scott, I'm going to put you on the spot. This was not one of the questions that we had agreed upon beforehand, but I think it's an important one. During the coming out process, I'm sure there's a lot of anxiety, and then when things don't go well, there may even be depression and even suicidal thoughts. Just speak to what we should be watching out for in our kids during that time, and how do you know when they need help that goes beyond just friends and really need to see a psychologist, psychiatrist, counselor?
I think if you need to be looking for changes from your kids' sort of day-to-day functioning. So if your kid is sort of starting to retreat into their room, or if they're starting to not enjoy things that they previously did enjoy, if they're becoming more irritable, if they're having sleep changes, if they're feeling like they can't connect with peers as better as well, they're feeling that even positive influences in their lives, friends that have been sort of supportive friends to them, they've been starting to distance themselves from those kids. I think those are real signs that your kid might be struggling and might not want to feel comfortable disclosing that. So I think that all those things. But I also don't want to elevate the anxiety in the room by saying that sometimes kids hide their feelings of distress, and I think that the point being, every single human is very different in the way they psychologically deal with stress. Some kids are going to show those signs, but then you also know your children very well. You're the experts on your own children. And so the point being, if you have a kid that always needs to put on a happy face, they're going to put on a happy face even if they're not feeling sad. So in that type of kid, I'd be a little bit more hyper-vigilant about sort of checking in with them and saying, I know that you tend to want to, be a pleaser, put on a happy face, but I want to give you the space to open up about negative emotions. I think creating conversations in families early on about having negative emotions talked through is healthy for all families. It's the families that need to put negative emotions aside, where people that view crying as a weakness, those are the families, I think, that are creating this notion in their kids of communication is not going to be two ways. And so you have to shift that dynamic in the way the family communicates in order to create a culture in a family environment that allows your kids to communicate properly with what they're going through.
I think sometimes if parents feel if I bring up anxiety, depression, thoughts of hurting myself, that I'll put those thoughts into my kids' heads. But talking about it is not going to make them feel that way or do that, right?
Absolutely. So the research shows that asking a kid if they're feeling thoughts about not wanting to be alive does not cause someone to go out and do something unsafe. So that's really important. I do think that if kids start to engage in self-injurious behaviors, that clear-cut parameters need to be established, and we need to create safety plans in the rooms, and the house needs to be sort of, cleaned and safety-proofed, and access to anything sharp needs to be taken away, medicines need to be monitored, access to your parents' medications need to be sort of monitored, and developing a trust plan. So trust is earned over time in kids who start to engage in self-injurious behaviors, and so I think that's a really important point that we all should be aware of.
So watch if they start wearing long sleeves all the time in the summertime.
Right, long sleeves in the summertime for sure. Although many kids wear baggy clothes, especially the trans youth, because they are trying to cover their body so it's 90-degree weather and they have their big sweatshirts on. But I think that that's important to look for changes in how the kid is acting. And do not hesitate. This is something that we deal with a lot. Do not hesitate to call 911 or a crisis hotline. I think kids will sometimes tell their parents, if you do that, I'm going to be worse. Or if you do that, I'm going to do something more dangerous, so don't do that. And it hijacks the parent and makes the parent feel guilty. And it puts that parent to a really difficult decision. you calling a hotline or you bringing that kid into the emergency room, if you're really concerned about your kid, shows the kid that, yep, I know you didn't want this, but this is something that we need to do because I'm not the mental health professional here. We need to have you assessed, and I'd rather have you alive and loved than in an unfortunate circumstance where you do something that you would end up not alive.
Yeah, we actually don't say that sometimes. Would you rather have a live gay kid or a dead gay kid? Because you got a gay kid.
I mean, I hear you, but at the same time, I've actually heard some parents, and I'm sorry to break the root down, say they want a dead gay kid.
All right, let's move on to the more
So I'm just saying, like, you have to meet parents where they're at. You have to really meet parents where they're at, and not ask them, sort of put them into questions that you don't want the answer to. Yeah.
So Jaren, you mentioned P.E.R.C several times. Tell us, what is P.E.R.C?
Okay, P.E.R.C was started in 1972 through one mother's love for her gay son, and now has like 400 chapters all over the world. We have a three-part mission. We educate, support, and advocate. We have 2 meetings in Columbus. Oh, good, she's bringing a second read. Oh, 30 minutes. Our meetings are the 3rd Sunday of every month at the Hilliard Fire Station, right there on Davidson and Truman at that corner. And everyone is welcome, allies as well as parents. The kids themselves are welcome. They just have to be accompanied by an adult. We also have a meeting in Canal Winchester on the 4th Sundays. In fact, this Sunday we are having a transgender woman who is going to be telling her story. So that's going to be really good. I happen to know Bobby, and she has a great story. That meeting is in the afternoon, and then we are going to be starting a new meeting probably in the spring for Spanish language, and that date and time will be announced, so we're excited about that. But P.E.R.C started out for parents, friends, allies of LGBT, and the L and the G is where the flag comes from. But now we just use the acronym P.E.R.C because we do everybody.
And Tyler, there's another support organization known as GLSEN. Tell us about that.
So GLSEN is a national organization that I know our GSA, our Gay Straight Alliance, Jerome uses. Any staff member that is aware of this has been very, very vocal about how outstanding the resources are and how many different things they've actually used on that, or perhaps shared with other colleagues. At Jerome, I think our support's really leveraged from our GSA, and then I know some of our other sister schools in Dublin, middle schools and high schools use the Spectrum organization or use Centero as a leverage point for different kinds of supports for kids.
Dr. Spout, what is the Thrive Clinic? I mentioned that when I introduced you.
Yes.
What is that?
I'm so really proud of our Thrive Clinic at Nationwide Children's Hospital. It started out as certainly kids with differences of sex development, so kids just with sort of anatomical differences, but it's evolved to kids who are gender diverse and who are transgender. We're a multidisciplinary clinic, so we have teams across sort of adolescent medicine and primary care, social work, behavioral health therapy, behavioral health psychiatry, as well as endocrinology. And I think that we meet as a team together because these decisions can be quite complex for different kids. And so having different levels of expertise involved in the care, including the parental level of expertise as well as the kids level, we're all putting our heads together to get the kid individualized care that meets their needs. We do have a pretty important mental health component to it. We do follow a model of care that Endocrine Society guidelines from 2017 recommend, which is to do an assessment of kids' sort of decision-making capacity. So I think a lot of parents fear that when they come into a clinic to serve kids who are trans or gender diverse, that we're putting them on this sort of train to transition plan. And I think that our job is really to look at more like all the factors involved, look kid might be going through, and really tailor the care to individualize the needs of the kid, whether that be therapy or more psychiatric care or mental health or medical care.
Tyler, at Dublin schools, what sort of resources are available to help gender diverse kids feel welcome and affirmed? What kind of support systems do you have?
Sure, I think that we want every single kid in our buildings to feel supported from at least one person they feel like is in their corner, whether that be a school counselor, one of our student support specialists, in some cases our administration, a teacher, a coach, or maybe one of our groups like Spectrum or the Gay Straight Alliance. We want to make sure that every kid's connected. So we actually spend time as a school trying to identify what kids do we have in our school buildings that somebody is not connected with. So we want to have 100% of our kids feel connected and supported, regardless of circumstance.
So we know Dublin Schools does a great job of providing support, but Michael, how do you counsel families who maybe they are not getting that support at school?
Yeah, I was going to say, so I also say that we, Centera, one of the people that works here, is also doing Celebrate You groups in the schools. So when that need does come up, they're actually having like a specialized support group for LGBT kids, and we're rolling it out like as the need comes up. So that would be something you can share with the counselor if you feel like your kid does need that. But yeah, I would say that. So this is sometimes like a marathon and not a sprint. So I usually coach parents by saying, like, you probably want to start from a place of negotiation. You should know that you do have rights in this situation, but that it probably, like, the path of least resistance is probably to work things out and like that to like start a conversation and see what the school is willing to do. And then after that, I would say you do, if you're having like a really significant problem, if it is something that you think is like really, it's like you're struggling to send your kid to school, or even if it's just that you are getting like pushed back in a way that doesn't seem very thoughtful. There are people, like I think Listen and also Kaleidoscope Youth Center has services that are related to like supporting schools that are rolling out like GSA programs and LGBT education, but they also help kids that are not being affirmed in their schools to know their rights, and then to kind of come in as a consultant for the school to say, listen, this is what is going on in other schools, these are the other choices that people have, and then trying to work through the problems, because typically people want to be affirming, they're just worried about blowback or they're worried about liability, and oftentimes when you give them a precedent, they're like, oh, okay, as long as I can point to one other school, like, it's not just us, that can let off. So know that you do have options and you have supports, but try to start a conversation in a way that is like from a place of negotiation.
Can I just add, I think that a lot of the times the schools that are afraid to implement policies that are affirming, that take away sort of gender binary, make it difficult for trans youth and gender nonconforming, they're just afraid of the other parents that are going to come down hard on them. So this is really a good opportunity for the parents who, even if you're not a parent of an LGBTQ youth, but you are an ally to other families, having parents band together is really, really important to put up sort of a demonstration of support. And so the more parents you can sort of involve to counter the parents that are sort of against the school policies, the more you're going to push that school to do the right thing.
So bathroom and locker room issues, how are those handled in Dublin schools?
So I feel like a lot of these questions this morning have been really, really challenging. There's lots of varying answers. This one's easy. This one's very, very simple. There's case law that establishes that a student can use the restroom or the locker room for which the gender they identify. Period. Simple as that. Our administrators are really our point people for any kind of questions like this. I know that they've been trained by our district. I think even maybe our district's legal counsel has provided them very, very clear expectations and guidelines. So that one's simple. Taking it one step beyond that, we have these laws in place to make sure that rights are protected and people feel comfortable. That being said, everybody, not everybody, but most everybody wants people around them to feel comfortable too. So if there's any sort of question, any sort of concern, work with an administrator administrator, work with a counselor, make sure you have something that's set up. We have students use our clinic restroom for a variety of different reasons, but that is a private restroom where students could potentially use. But ultimately, there are rights that are very, very clear and easy for us to follow. And then secondly, we want to do everything we can to make sure that all students are comfortable.
And that kind of brings up the next question. Is there a mechanism for kids who aren't comfortable, who may be heterosexual, and there's someone of the opposite biological gender in the bathroom? Like, how do they, talk about that with others?
Yeah, it's possible that students might not know what the rules are, or might not know what the laws or rights of other people are. So that's a great opportunity for teaching. But retreating back to, we want everyone to have somebody they can go to in the building, teacher, coach, administrator, school counselor, have them seek out that person and say, I'm having trouble with this. Perhaps there's some teaching that'll take place, or like I mentioned, there's always an alternate place where students can use the restroom, like the clinic. And that doesn't have to be for any one specific reason. So I think that I can't think of any situations that we haven't found resolved that people were comfortable with, and I think we work with that.
And the same with the locker room?
Yes, locker room as well. Locker room, restroom, interchangeable. Same thing in terms of rights.
You can tell the straight kid, use the clinic bathroom if they're uncomfortable.
Certainly. And there's been some rare instances with some specific nuances where it was like, that's actually a really appropriate solution to this scenario. And everybody was pretty good with it. So it gets tricky and complicated.
Can I jump in with one more thing? You said case law. So it's not state law that LGBTQ are protected yet, right?
You have this answer?
I don't know that answer. What I do know is that that's what our administration and what we follow as a school district. Which law,
That's great.
governing body that comes from, I do not.
So I think it's been argued and decided by specific judges, but the Ohio Fairness Act on the state level is in the Senate right now. It's Senate Bill 11, and P.E.R.C is one of the organizations, probably along with Children's Hospital and others, who are advocating for the passage of that statewide bill. All it does is extend the rights and protections that already exist for people based on race, creed, color, national origin, veteran status, marital status, disability or ability status, to people based on orientation and gender identity.
So I know a lot about this issue. I was the federal expert for the United States Department of Justice.
We have 15 minutes.
Against North Carolina. I know. And also won a case in Philadelphia, a federal law for these rights. The talking points that you all need to know, I think, that are really relevant for you, is the fact that segregating kids by, sex in the bathrooms actually makes no sense, because quite honestly, if you're worried about, like, if all boys need to be in the bathroom and you're worried about putting, say, quote, girl anatomy into the boy room, it's all based on heteronormative fears that presume that nobody's gay, okay? So there's been no attempts or legislation to try and exclude gay boys from being in the boys' locker room, but technically if the fear is that sexual activity will take place, there's plenty of reason to think that that would happen with a gay boy in a men's room. Okay, so I think that that's like kind of the overarching talking point that you all need to sort of be aware of when you're going to the school administrators and say this makes no sense.
Let's talk about an easier topic. Sleepovers. Laura, if your child's having a sleepover with a same-sex friend, do you need to tell the other parent that your child is gay?
No.
I told you it was an easier.
But let me tell you why. One, sleepovers are about fun with their friends, right? That's why they go to sleepovers. Two, you don't want to out your kid. That would be horrible. And also, the gay population's already over-sexualized. Don't do that. Don't add to that. They're not predators. They want to go hang out with their friends.
They're perceived as over-sexualized. They're not over-sexualized.
No, they're perceived. Thank you. I was so into my answer. But in general, the gay culture culture is perceived as over-sexualized. People over-sexualize them, and they shouldn't be. These are kids who want to go have fun with their friends. That's it. So we don't want to out them or add anything to that. The only caveat would be, just like we would with any of our teens, know who they're hanging out with. If it's 14, 15, 16-year-old kids, make sure it's not the girlfriend or the boyfriend, the same-sex partner. Sometimes our kids kind of want to figure out a way to hang out with their significant other, but I think we do know our kids, and we know if they're interested in or involved, or romantically involved in or interested with these other kids. And that's probably likely not going to happen, that'd be my guess. It's just kids want to have fun with their friends, period. You don't have to tell anybody anything. It's your kids' private business.
Jared, what about dating? How do you approach that?
Well, the way to approach dating for your LGBTQ child is exactly how you approach dating for your straight cisgender child. So whatever rules you have, if you want to make them wait till they're 16, which personally I think is ridiculous, but whatever your rules for your straight cisgender kid might be, same rules. Why should it be different? And that, of course, varies from home to home.
So Laura, how do you have the talk?
The same way you do any of your other kids. Now, there are those who would say that it's a little bit different for LGBT kids, and it could be. You may be worried about slightly different things at different times. I did send to Kathy, but it was later last night. It may not be on the website yet. No, that's okay. A really great resource with inclusive sex ed talk websites. So a lot of places where a parent can go, and there are places for teens too to learn. But you do the same thing you would with any of your children. You talk about your own values and what you value as a family. Do you make to marriage? You talk about those things. You talk about being in love, not just experimenting. All the things that you might feel and the values you want to instill in your child, any of your children. And then you talk about safety, as we all do, as we all care about, and for kids who are heterosexual, you worry about pregnancy and STDs. Kids who are gay, you may not worry about pregnancy, but you worry about STDs. And so you talk about the safety, just the basics, functions
Anyone
of
with
that.
a penis should wear a condom unless
There
you're
you go.
actually trying to start a family.
There's the sex ed talk. But you also talk about boundaries. You help your child set their own boundaries and know how to get out of an unsafe or uncomfortable situation. And you talk about respecting another child's boundaries, just like we would with any of our kids. We talk to our girls and our boys about protecting themselves and their bodies and other people, respecting other people. But this, hopefully, P.E.R.C can put that, there's a list, you can click on the links to it's inclusive sex ed talk. So it's a great place to just search and learn for yourselves.
Michael, what about siblings? How can we support siblings of LGBTQ youth?
Well, I do think there is some of the same things, like for the family, that they would be involved in the same conversations that you were having with your other children, and that you would kind of just educate them on the diversity of the experience. And then other than that, I think, so one of the things that we're starting at Centero is to get a group for gender creative kids that are 11 and under, but also their siblings, so that it's like kind of like they have access to other kids that, and kind of just have exposure to, again, diversity, to see it rather than just hear about it. So it would be like, if that isn't something that you can get to though, like I think it would be to include the kid, in, even if there's outings where you're trying to have like a play date with another kid that's gender variant, and to kind of just, again, having the same kinds of conversations that are open, that are like curious and asking them how they're seeing this and experiencing it, but then also kind of like leading them around like with the science and with like more like specific terms, and that's like what the kind of framework that they do.
Jaren, you made a comment about church earlier in our discussion, but what should families think about if their faith community is not affirming?
Get out.
I have a personal story which would take longer probably than the amount of time we have available. But when I said don't be your child's first bully, don't take your child into situations where they are going to be facing harm. So if your kid has diabetes, why would you take them to the cookie fair? You know, I mean, just a broad example. But why would you take them somewhere where you know they're going to be damaged? And so, I mean, I am an advocate of people worshiping who choose to worship, but please, please, please try to find a church community where your child's not going to be damaged. And that is really more and more difficult. In fact, the church where we raised our son, the United Methodist Church, is facing a split. They're actually going to split off a new thing, which is going to be traditional. They prefer the word traditional over bigot. I don't know why. I prefer to call a spade a spade. But anyway, they're starting a whole new church. But I got news for them. Gay kids are going to be born there. Now what are they going to do? So, and they're not splitting over the issue of LGBTQ, because that's not an issue. Those are people. But the issue is over bigotry. So bigotry over inclusion. And it's very difficult because, you know, people come up with their belief system, but there are ways for you to be educated about the truth. And number one, you know, people hold the Bible up and say, this is the book that tells us homosexuality is wrong. First of all, quit using that word. I mean, just like, you know, it's a technical term and it turns most people off, and it stigmatizes people who are LGBTQ. But that particular word did not appear in the Bible until 1936. Can you bring out a soapbox for me to climb up on? Because I got some things to say. But 1936 is when that was put into the Bible. It was never there. It was misinterpreted. And sorry for all of y'all with penises at this end of the table, and those of you who have them. But white men have been dictating what people see, think, feel, believe for way too long, and it's time to make some changes. And if your church is, or synagogue, or temple, or whatever you go to, is a place where your child is going to maybe start cutting or think they are not worthy of God's love, I'm telling you what, these people who tell LGBTQ kids that God does not love them, I'd like to get in a room with them.
They may have an issue with God loving them.
Well, that's probably the issue. Personally, I believe God loves everybody. I don't think God has a penis either. You want to know that? But anyway.
Penises are not bad.
Penises are not bad. No, in fact, I've been married. It'll be 30 years this year, and my husband, I like his penis. That's how.
5 minutes.
I just want to say in response to her, I would like to be in that room with her and see what happens. But I think that I agree with everything that she says, and clearly there's a lot of passion and experience that
I
comes
didn't
from
use
that.
the F-bomb, but I do have this beautiful multicolored sapphire ring that my husband bought for me so that when I drove past the church, I could flip it.
But what I would say is,
We got 5 minutes.
one of the points that Jared made was that, you know, for people, don't bring your diabetic to the cookie store, don't bring your kid to a place that's going to be harmful to them. There are some parents that don't know that church or that faith-based institution is harmful to them. And so if you don't know that the cookie store doesn't, you know, is harmful to the diabetic, then how can you stop going? And so I think that's one key point here is to not shame the parents that continue to be grappling with these issues, because if you shame those parents, then you're going to lose them. And you have to understand that the parents are going through a lot of complex sort of like forces in their mind, a lot of like different factors pulling at them. And if you are kind of just saying, don't do this, then they are probably going to view you as someone with a very absolute viewpoint that has your own issues to deal with.
Jaron and I are further along, but we
Right.
know that it's very hard to walk away from a faith community, a church family.
Right.
That's extremely difficult.
Right.
So it's not an easy answer is the point. Is
Exactly.
that, that question to Jaron of how do you handle your faith? You can be faithful and you take steps and you find other sources and you find your way, but you don't have to walk away.
And at Children's Hospital, we have, faith-based leaders that help families get connected with more affirming places.
But conversion therapy is something a lot of churches, therapy, conversion therapy. Who wants to talk about that? Okay.
So, Michael, what are some resources that you recommend to families who may be wanting to buy books or go to websites? Are there specific resources that you recommend?
Yeah, so I wanted to have more books on this list just so that I came off like way more educated. But there is one book that I think is really good for youth that's called My New Gender Workbook, which is by Kate Bornstein, who's like a long time transgender theorist and feminist author. So that was a really good one, but they're pretty much like only a few sites that I really refer people to most often. So for teens, when it comes to sexual health and stuff, I always talk about Scarleteen, which is a website, I think it's scarleteen.org, that is really for them, partly by them, but moderated by adults. There's also a website called amaze.org that's sexual health based too, but it's very scientific, very, very inclusive. Was that you?
That's on
Okay, that's a great one.
the thing that's happy that
Yeah.
will be on
And
the PERC website.
the woman that comes in to teach sex ed that is through Centero, the program's called Healthy Bodies, Healthy Futures. She uses that website like it's kind of her Bible. That is a really good, the amaze.org website. I would also say genderspectrum.org is another one that they actually have separate pages for providers, parents, and youth. So that one is a good starting off point. But also this Family Acceptance Project is also good. As well as, I don't know if anybody saw the Gender Unicorn that was on actually more than one table. That's from the Transgender Student Educational Resource organization, and they've got a lot of really cute infographics and a lot of just good information.
Let's give a round of applause to
Thank you all for being here. Go home, tell your friends about it. Bring more people tonight. We're back here at 7 o'clock, and we appreciate this panelist so much. Stop by and see our books that are over there as well too. Our next program is February 6th. We're in the at the Abbey Theater. And did you have something?
We also videotape. I don't know that everybody knows that we videotape our things, and we videotape today, right? We videotape today and this evening, I believe. And this might be a topic someone had mentioned, I know when we were planning, that some families might be more comfortable watching. But I think it was really awesome, and I really appreciated everybody's input. It was really fabulous.